Peace.
Peace.
This is Joshua Law, Mr. PhD. You're just now entering the cipher called Real to Real 360. KYs.
Peace, God.
Bring that beat in, kid.
Yeah. What's going on, party people? Welcome to the Real to Real 360 show. Let's get it in. We do the knowledge and wisdom so you can understand. Real to Real 360 shows at full command. We changing the game for how it always taught. From honest to freedom to an independent thought. Yo, the show is here to bring about a change for real. To lighten everyone so we all know the deal. 360 degrees is a fact. We created the show to give our love back to our community so we can know what's going on and giving us support from knowledge to porn. So if you're ready to learn, then it's time to go. Sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Peace. Peace. What's good, party people in the place to be? How's everybody? Peace to Allah's 5% nation, the gods and nurse, and to all the human families of the planet Earth. I be the G.O.D., the DJ KWISE a.k.a. Kato, the black superhero, giving you once again mighty greetings and blessings to everybody. We got a special show right here for the Real to Real 360 show. But first, how's everybody doing? And without further ado, we hope you had a blessed weekend, safe one as well. But let me bring on my brother in God so we can chop this up right and exact. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my co-host with the most, Joshua Allah, a.k.a. Mr. PhD. Peace, God. Peace, Martha. Redmond, how are you?
Peace to all the nation of gods and nerds, the last 5%, the four part of the planet Earth. Also, I want to make sure that I acknowledge the two young ladies that we have had on the show for H&L Pickle Perfection. They will be selling their pickles at the Dallas Juneteenth Festival this month, in June 19th. So go out and support the young ladies. Make sure y'all add on and help them out. But today we have a spectacular guest. Matter of fact, a guest that is coming back on, because the first time we came on, there was a situation and he had to address this situation. And only way that he could address this situation if he was a part of the solution. So right now, we want to bring on the commissioner of Ward 8, our righteous brother. We want to bring him in with our righteous way of speaking. Peace to the God, Commissioner Salim Adolfo.
Peace. How you doing, family?
Peace. Hey, we got you a whole new intro in here. Did you hear
it? Every good hero should have some theme music.
Yeah.
And Chris come out with Jack of Spades.
How's the God doing, man?
Yo, I'm doing good. Y'all gotta forgive me. I was taking a walk, trying to make sure I can stay fit. So I'm stationary in a second so we can continue to build, but we here right now.
That's peace, Lord. I want to like a lot of times individuals don't realize your actual affiliation with us and things of that nature. And I have to explain to him that's the God. He's been the God and he's always will be the God. You know what I mean? And the Father has always told us that we should be a part of all sections of government and everything else. So you're just doing your duty as a civilized person. So would you just give them an intro, a little small snippet of who the commissioner actually is?
So let me tell you something. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. Electoral politics, to me, will not, cannot resurrect our people from the mentally dead, right? It's not going to get us freedom, justice, and equality. What it can do is get us into some better spaces, but we still going to have to do for self.
Mm-hmm.
And so I give you an example. This is an independent media project that you have here. This isn't controlled by the Washington Post or the CNN.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the freedom to have who you want for how long you want and then communicate it wherever you want, right? However, it won't hurt to get the sponsorship that some of the spaces have. So we got to master all things in our circumference, right? So I tell folks, and I can say this anywhere, use me as a resource. And so once I started studying and getting some knowledge, then I said, okay, how do I grow this knowledge wisdom and understanding exponentially, right? And so how do I grow it exponentially is to be able to say, now that I'm in this space, I need folks to come to me and apply for a grant in my commission, just as an example. Right. And then I can vote, because I'm just one person that votes. But if you got a good presentation, you got the magnetic, then you can get other folks to buy into your product, and then we can bless you with a donation or with a grant for you to go and do your project.
Right.
That's just one thing that we have. Or when we're talking about like affordable housing in our community, that's something that I can help people add on with. But then there's the day-to-day things that help our community become better. And we want to live in a civilized space. We want to live in a clean space. We want freedom, justice, and equality, food, clothing, and shelter, just like everybody else. We want a decent place for our people to live. So that's why you see me trying to make sure the roads are clean, that broken utility wires are fixed, because our children are inquisitive by nature. And one of the ways that they learn is through touch. So if they touch a broken utility wire, they could be electrocuted. No. And so I got to make sure things like that are fixed. But I think ultimately what kind of just led me into the space is it's one thing to study our lessons, and then it's another thing to live mathematics.
Right, true indeed.
Right. And if I don't take control of the resources in my community, somebody else will, and thus be in control of me. Right. So this is just one part. Like I said, this isn't going to get us exactly where we need to be, but this is just one step. And I tell everybody we need to build inside and outside of the system.
That's right.
Because I don't know for a fact because I wasn't there, but it's rumored that when the mafia went out to Las Vegas and got the casino started, they just wasn't always able to open them up. Right. They had to get people in the office to help subsidize it, so that when they did that, but they had the infrastructure outside of the system.
Right.
Right. And so then they were able to make it work that way. And so, like for me, like right now, we just created the Malcolm X Community Garden on Malcolm X Day. And now we're going to be able to bless organizations that come through with grants to continue to build the garden. And what the garden will do is teach our children the science of agriculture. But let's just be honest, we always don't have the necessary goal within our community to finance some of the projects. So this is just one way. Then it'll help us grow so that we can then get access to funds in other spaces, and then we won't need to rely on somebody such as myself to subsidize that, even though I can know it, because I'm only going to be here for a limited amount of time in this form. And so we got to create systems that are outside of the current power structure that can help get us to where we need to be.
Okay. Lord, I wanted to speak to several events that you have coming up, like the Feed the Hood events.
Right.
The Feed the Hood events are not just in Washington, D.C., they're also two in Baltimore. What was your determined idea to make those events manifest in our communities?
Well, as we know, when you feed somebody, you're just not giving them physical food, you also give them mental food.
Right.
And honestly, back to studying, I read Huey P. Newton's book, All Power to the People. And in that, he talked about how do we teach people. He said people can learn through observation and participation. They see it and then they do it. Right. And so in that space, I was like, okay, well, what can I create to be able to do that? And one of the things I know is like you can't move the people when they're hungry. So you got to feed them. Right. And feeding people, you know how it is when you break bread, you build relationships with people. That's why, like in the mosque, when they have Eid, they fast and they build community. The Ummah comes together to build community. Right. And so when we're able to feed people, that's a certain kind of bond that you form with folks. So that helps develop the trust amongst people. And helping people meet their basic needs is something that, we need to do. That's my Justice Cipher born, is to teach freedom, justice, and equality to the entire human family and providing folks with some of the basic needs that they're supposed to have. So then in doing that, that helps elevate us to the next level. So now I can talk to you about drug rehabilitation, mental health counseling, workforce development. So the way that we connected the dots in some of these spaces was one of the first things I did was there's an old charter school that wasn't being used. So we sent letters to the chair of council to ask the council to move the University District of Columbia's workforce development program to this building. This building is about 500 feet across from the intersection of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. So if you notice from that intersection, you know we ground zero in the hood.
Yes, definitely
It's
so.
His brothers doing whatever they need to do to survive and working in the above and underground economy.
Mm-hmm.
At this place, they teach nation building skills as part of the workforce development program. It's carpentry, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and construction management. So you get these certifications, all you need to have is District of Columbia residency.
Mm-hmm.
And you just gotta fill out the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta have an ID. So you gotta have ID, be a resident, and then you fill out the paperwork, and you could go learn these skills for free.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea behind Feed the Hood was to not just pass out food, but to also connect people with the services that they need, and then get them the resources to where they can learn how to do for self.
Mm-hmm.
And so now when we go to some of these other places, I'm bringing you in with the food, the physical food, but now I want to help you with the mental food and help you get to where you need to be so you can learn to do for self. But it's not just those 5 areas that I named. So now we got pharmacy technician. We also have there's IT careers, and you know the way that this technology is moving, we need to have our people learn some of these skills. And so, like I said, when I see myself as a commissioner, when I became commissioner, we all became commissioner. And so I want to be able to connect people with these resources. I need to be the conduit, for those things. So when we feed in the hood, we're not just saying we want to pass out some food or some clothes. We want to connect people to these resources.
Okay. Now, there's also an event that you're doing, Stop the Gun Violence.
Right. So there was, so I'm glad you brought that up. There was some legislation that was being passed on ghost guns.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought the folks who put the bill together with folks of the community so that we could talk about ghost guns. Ghost guns are guns that can't be detected or that people make on their own by getting pieces and parts off the internet. And sometimes they make them so they can't be detected through metal detectors.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that gun violence in our community is quite interesting. Bobby Wright, black psychiatrist, once asked the question, why do black people kill black people? And the answer was because they haven't been trained to kill white people.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's what they need to go do, but what I am saying is that we've been conditioned to kill each other, right? Whether it be through music or movies or just picking up bad habits from those before us. And so with ghost guns, those are guns that can't be detected. So we were trying to figure out ways to get these illegal guns off the street. And, that's multiple ways. So one way is through legislation. So being able to hold those accountable who make those guns, but also you have a legal right to be able to make your own firearm.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to adjust that legislation to regulate that because we don't have no sense. It doesn't make no sense to tell people they can't build their own. Smith & Wesson doesn't have a monopoly on being able to make something, a firearm, and neither does Remington have a monopoly on that. So all 3 of us right here should be able to make that. And so we had to clarify that law so people can make that. But ultimately what we want to do is try to get young brothers and sisters now from, bringing harm to each other, having some conflict resolution skills. I want to be able to use, my mind is my 9, right? In that space. So if you got to use a weapon, use it in the right way. Don't always go use that on your sister or your brother when you don't have to.
Indeed. Now, we're looking at a uprising of juveniles who are committing these violent crimes and violent acts in the District of Columbia and all over the country. What are some of the steps that can be made to help reduce some of these violent crimes?
So I'm going to be if I can, just be completely honest.
Absolutely.
That's on us, right? Us 3 right here. We responsible for some of that.
Right.
Having ciphers in the Valley of the Dry Bones, right? I was just building with the guard, Big Lord Jamel, about being able to have ciphers held, parliaments held in those spaces where those sisters and brothers are at, right? two elements of matter can't occupy the same space at the same time. Right? So if we bringing in that righteous energy, something's going to have to give. So part of that is because for a variety of different reasons, because some of us are older, some of us have our own babies to take care of. So I won't say we're all 100% completely responsible for that, but a lot of times we move into a certain level of comfort as we've gotten older, and so now we got to go back into those spaces to where some of us got the math from, where some of us got knowledge of self from. Some may have gotten it, behind the wall. Some may have gotten it just from listening to Brand Nubians. Some have gotten it just from just being around. But we got to go out there into some of those spaces, and I think that's one way. Another way that I think that we can address some of those things is by somebody like me who happens to be in the elected space, and that's connecting people to the resources that they need. Studies have always shown that high crime areas are due to lack of economic opportunities. Right. But we can't never dismiss the counterintelligence program. We can never let the open enemy off the hook whatsoever. Right. So we seen or we heard about what has happened to many of our leaders in the past, whether it was Marcus Garvey, whether it was the father, or Malcolm, a lot of them were assassinated or thrown in jail for trying to, do the right thing. So we should never let the open enemy off the hook. And why I bring that up is that stunted our growth in many ways, right? We saw what bringing drugs into the community has done. Everybody that's seen Boys in the Hood, no, we don't own any ships. We don't own no boats that's flying that stuff in here. So none of this stuff happened by happenstance. It was calculated. It was done. So we should never, ever dismiss that. And so we've been playing catch up for so long in some of these spaces. And so now it's easy. It's a lazy analysis to look at the last 5 to 6 years and say, oh, it's an uptick in gun violence, right? Technology plays a part in that. I remember one day sitting at the dinner table with my family and everybody was on a laptop, right? How many of us actually have dinner with our family now with DoorDash and Uber Eats and Grubhub? Folks are just eating when they can. So some of the things that we have done as civilized people, we moved away from, and we've accepted 500 years of European behavior. So we're not going back to 18th century Mali or the golden age of West Africa, but what we got to do is just start to be more responsible in our communities as men. And I get it. It's a lot to risk. I had a very serious conversation with a brother. He said he was going downstairs from his apartment to take the trash out, and a fight broke out in front of his building. This another guy was arguing with his sister. He wanted to protect the sister, but he said he had to take a second to think. His queen is upstairs with his newborn. His universe is upstairs. If he gets into this incident right here, something could happen to him, and who's going to be responsible, for his family? And these are tough decisions for us to make. And I'm just being honest. I can understand that. But at what point do we, by ourselves, we're going to have to take a position on some of those things? And so I don't look for our open enemy who has profited off of our demise to undo something that they're guilty of doing. We acknowledge it, we study it, put me in a position to where I could get some resources, help somebody else grow exponentially, and then we got to go, we have to do for self. And in doing for self, we also have to build our own way to protect our civilization.
Now, we're looking at prison reform and also to educating adults, because we have a lot of adults that are functionally illiterate. So a lot of times they dumb themselves down with artificial stimulations, to feel like they're on the same plane of energy with other individuals.
Right.
Now, how is it what programs do you have for adults to get educated and job training programs for them? Because we spoke about the one that's on Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, which sits right directly in the middle of the hood.
Right.
Now, how are we getting this word out? Because I've watched you when you go through the neighborhoods, you see things that could be hazardous and you make sure that these things are being removed. Is the same energy given to the community for its education and job training and things like that?
All right, so that's good. That's good. So when we talked about feed the hood, so
Right.
we did that there, but we go into some other spaces when it may not be feed the hood. And I'm on the board of the United Planning Organization, UPO for short. If you've
Mhm.
ever seen the movie Come Talk to Me with Don Cheadle, he plays a character called Petey Green. So I
Right.
work at the Petey Green Center there. And we have workforce development. We have stuff, especially for returning citizens. We got people that's just coming home, like literally they may have come home on Monday, and then on Tuesday we right there, and we're helping them get first and last month's rent, emergency rental assistance program, and then we connect them to workforce development because some of those fields that I mentioned at the University of District of Columbia's workforce development program may not be available. So we have some other programs that are available as well, through UPO. And I'm gonna be honest, it's really good to be able to be in that space because there's still some other components to help people with. So you're even talking about literacy, right?
Mhm.
We Toastmasters, which helps people learn how to do public speaking,
Mhm.
right? We have a program there in which we help folks build their resume, and sometimes folks just need some support, some mental health support to get through those spaces. And mental health, not saying that the person may be crazy or anything
Mhm.
like that, but sometimes people just need somebody there to just identify with that can help them. Because if you just came home after like 25 years, you're not up on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.
At least you shouldn't be.
Right. So those are some things that we got to help people navigate through. And
Mhm.
we also got to let, especially some older brothers know that have pride. It's no shame in not knowing.
Mhm.
It's shame in fronting like and then when it's time to show and prove, you look like an ass because you just wasn't honest about your situation. And so now we got to coach you through those things. So that
Right.
was the second added layer. So we're not going to abandon you because you was fronting, but it's a lot easier. And so then this is where our skills come in at, is to be able to see somebody and be like, okay, I don't even want to create the situation to where you don't feel uncomfortable. I'm just going to propose it as if you don't know anything from the jump, and then we can just start from ground zero with you.
Okay.
Keith, Keith, let me add something to this, because when you're talking about resolutions to certain individual problems,
Right.
especially dealing with the gun situation and all the violence going on, the hardest thing that I see as far as it goes with us as black men, number one, we already being opposed by the other man, but then we're being opposed within ourselves for the wrong direction
Right.
instead of the right direction. So
Right.
when we start traveling in the right direction with the knowledge of self and then coming together, then again, the other opposing foes see that as a unification, which to them is a scare. So they got to throw up a flag to do something to combat that.
Right.
So, with where you are now in the positions that you're reaching for, what is the best advice that you can give the young brother on the street who sits there and says, well, I want to come and speak with the commissioner so I can learn what I need to do and get the other youths involved?
Well, this is what I would tell folks is that I can't do this alone. I
Mhm.
need your help. So if you need me to help you, I need you to also help yourself, and we can navigate this space together. Right. And what that looks like is, I got a young brother that I'm working with now. I need you to show up on time. I need you to be ready to work. And then we could go with it from there. Just commit to yourself, right? Because I given the folks the example. I look at LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony. Both had great careers. One of the biggest differences we see in LeBron versus Melo, LeBron was putting in 2-a-days in the summertime. Like, we watching him continuously work to perfect his craft. And so he don't got a good jump shot like Melo. Jumper is wet, right? But LeBron had to consistently work harder at other things, and now we see it paying off. And so I would tell younger brothers, especially if you got you got a jacket, you got a record, now you're gonna have to work twice as hard on some things, right? We're gonna have to work on, like, I didn't even learn this term until about 6 years ago. We're gonna have to work on your soft skills, right? We're gonna have to work on how do you communicate, right? How do you lead the room, right? What are your manners like? There's been times I've walked into the bank because I've been previously polite with them. If I forgot my ID, right, they're like, okay, we know who you are, because they don't have to help me, but because you're polite, you go into these spaces, and I think this is where the messenger, what he brought, is overlooked. Being polite, being kind and courteous takes you a long way. That don't make you no sucker.
No.
You don't always have to, ice grill everybody.
Yeah, to have some social skills.
Indeed, right? And I think those things are sometimes just overlooked. And I don't believe in, to pull yourself up from the bootstraps, what they call it, the respectability politics. If you just put on a suit, everything will be okay. No, that's not true. But what you need to do is just understand how you minimize the contradictions. If it means if you iron your clothes, you got a fresh cut, that might take you longer. I mean, it may take you further down the road and longer down the road than if you wasn't. Because people are going to judge you right, wrong, or indifferent by the presentation of your product.
You're right.
And that's just the reality. So until you got $2-3 million, well, you could just walk in a room and you ain't got to have no haircut like Jay-Z and Kevin Durant. You're going to have to navigate the space. And it ain't no shame in that, because you got to live that life.
Yeah, definitely so. I see my herb done kicked in. But everything is real. When it comes down to social skills, manners, personal values, things of that nature, these are some of the things that are missing when it comes down to educating our children in today's time. We look at things and we speak to certain things, but the environment that they're growing up in and the things that they are being fed isn't conducive for a civilized society.
Indeed.
So how are we able to reverse the polarity from what they see inside their home and what we're trying to give them outside their home?
I'm still trying to figure that one out. I'm not even going to lie to you. And I ain't ashamed to tell you, I don't know. But what I do is just one, because, the speed of light travels faster than the speed of sound. So we can see something and understand it quicker by doing it versus just talking to them. So, that's where our mathematics comes in at. But I think, like I said, it's being an example and building the infrastructures. And what those things look like is, like I said, getting people the tools and the resources that they need and then doing it. So like my next project that I'm working on, well, not next, but something that I've been working on and just trying to refine it, is next time I get a group of brothers to come together, we walking out of there with an investment club form. Right. And what I mean by that, I'm going to have folks from the National Black MBA Association, the Bar Association, and the National Association of Black Accountants. Some of these folks that are in these professional spaces, that's a lawyer, that's the accountants, and that's the folks that major in business. We're going to bring some brothers from the hood together. And when we meet and have our men's meeting, we just not going to vent. We just not going to talk about how our sisters are stressing us out, how the earth's doing all of this other stuff. We're not just going to talk about police brutality and how hard it is for brothers and the system is against us. Yes, you can vent, but when we leave out of here, we're going to leave with the document in hand that said we're forming an investment club, and now we can start to pool our resources together in a legal way so that we got this structure that's put together. And then I'm going to tell, and we're working with high school students to do the same. And what we're going to have these high school students do is put together their own clothing line, create an online store so they can sell it, and then they're going to reinvest the money that they make by buying shares of stock in Nike and in Apple. So if you're going to if you have an iPhone, own Apple. If you're going to wear these Nikes, own it, so that when you go to buy it, you buying your own product. You investing back to yourself. But we also got to work with their families to do this. And so this is a way for us to bring the family together. because when children open up a bank account, they're going to need their guardian or their parent to be the custodian of the account. So this is just one way, out of many. And I had to learn how to move from theory into practice. So the theory part is, oh yeah, we need to come together. We need to learn how to form businesses together. But then we need to learn, how do you practice that? How do you actually implement that? So, and I'll be honest, it's taken me some time to really figure that out, because I know some folks that are in the professional organizational space, and they get cast away by folks like, calling them, oh, that's the petty bourgeoisie, or that's them uppity Negroes. And that may be true for some of them, but some of them have some skills and they want to come into the community. And then, some don't want to be in the hood with folks because they unorganized, they don't know what they're doing. Well, that may be true for some, but we can argue, or we can take what you got, the gifts you got, and the gifts the other people have, and then we can try to put them together. So every time I meet with folks, it's what material reality can we change or create, not just for us to just talk.
Okay, Commissioner, we know that you were running for reelection.
Correct.
And I know that the topic of a lot of things that are coming across your board is the drug problem that's in Ward 8. When these young people and these older people are dealing with this fentanyl and also these other artificial stimulations that are mind-altering drugs that are causing them to do things that makes them other than themselves. How are you able to address those situations, bring more rehabilitation programs to those families that are suffering behind those drugs and things of that nature?
Very good question. So I actually have a course in Narcan training that I need to take this week. And then we'll be also distributing those things, throughout the community. And it's also in like some of the other spaces that I just talked to you. So all of this stuff is holistic, it's connected. So if we're working with some young brothers and their families on how to create a business and then helping them execute the business, then they're not doing these other activities, at least not at that moment. And we need to show them why they don't need to be doing those things as part of the program. So it's not just something that's isolated. We got to do triple and quadruple double duty. And when we're doing anything, is that we also got to take the time to talk about conflict resolution, healthy male and female relationships, drug addiction, how to eat to live. Like, we got to do all of these things at the same time, but still come out with something tangible. So to your point about what can I personally do around drug addiction, like, I'm not no drug counselor, but I know what's within my scope, what's in my cipher to be able to do. So it's being able to tap into some of all of these things. But ultimately, especially with young people, it's helping to create an environment and a culture around them so that they can see something different. I don't always want to go into a situation telling folks, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. How about we show them, you can go to the zoo. I was at the zoo today, right? You can go to the museum, right? You can learn to play an instrument. You can go work out. You can travel to different states. Like, let me introduce you to some other things where you can get a natural high. I remember the first time that light bulb went off after listening to Wake Up. And it was like, wow, okay, there's another world out here, information that I need to learn. And then I started reading books. And for me, that was one way for me, to have that natural high, that euphoric feeling. And one of the greatest things that a human being can experience is having an idea and then seeing that idea be manifested into a physical reality, and helping to curate that space for some of our younger people is very powerful. But that's not happening when we got death in our music and our movies and what we see on social media. So it's a challenge, because they often then they go back to homes that aren't filled with life. Their homes may be filled with death. And like, I had a conversation with somebody, and not that this is a dating show, but they were talking about Russell Wilson and Future. Like, what made Russell Wilson a square? Right? What made Future not a square? And it's, I think Wise Intelligent had a album. It's no longer smart to be dumb. Right? So shifting this culture of being the class clown or just being foolish, that's never been cool amongst, anybody that, I ever built with, right? In
Right.
fact, it was shameful to not know information,
Mhm.
right? So that, you get embarrassed when you didn't know something and you felt like you know it. So it's just trying to shift those things, and it's stuff that has to happen simultaneously in the things that we do. So I'm also working right now to take a group of young brothers to Great Falls, Virginia, just to get them out the hood so they can talk, so they can share and relax and release a lot of tension and just be in a natural environment, and we can talk about some of those things as well in that space. But just showing them where it's okay to not do some of the things that you see on social media. They're going to be what they see. And so I
Right.
got that example.
Now, are there programs like you said, going to was that Great Falls in
Mhm.
Virginia? Are there more boys to men mentoring programs that you're involved with to help these young men and young girls too in the community of Ward 8?
There are some out there. I'm not involved with as many I would like to be, just to be honest with you, because
Mhm.
being a commissioner takes up so much time because I got to do a lot of reading and I got to do a lot of research. And now it's reelection season. So I got to, get out and campaign. I can campaign a little bit easier because I'm already in the seat. And so me doing my job is a way to campaign. But in terms of being able to be on the ground like I once used to be, we used to have the Saturday school,
Mhm.
and we used to have Divine Culture would come through and he would work on the children with on their mathematics,
Mhm.
teaching them actual facts. We would learn how to purify water, doing
Mhm.
things like that. I'm not able to be in that space as much as I used to be, but it's helped me to it's informed how I recommend policy now.
Mhm.
But I can definitely get that information out to folks. Just do some research and just share that with those that may need the information.
Okay, now we're talking about you're running for reelection.
Hmm.
What is the platform that you are standing on and that you're going to be showing and proving to the people that they need to keep you as the commissioner in Ward 8?
Good question. So one of the first things I wanted to do is improve the infrastructure in our community, and
Mhm.
I've been doing that and will continue to do that. So I've worked to get speed bumps in front of all of the schools in our community, and the
Mhm.
reason why that is important because now people need to slow down when
Mhm.
they're driving in front of our schools. We've had multiple children hit by cars. We had a father and his two daughters hit on National Walk to School Day, and they were in the crosswalk. And so getting potholes fixed, getting the sidewalks fixed. And so those are little things that impact your quality of life. If you can walk down the street and not trip over a broken up sidewalk now, that's because we got that fixed and you don't notice that.
Mhm.
Something else that we worked on was some environmental justice issues, and that could be cleaning up parks. We created some community gardens or gotten more resources to a farmer's market so that
Mhm.
folks can get healthy fruits and vegetables. And then it's access to information,
Mhm.
getting folks to be aware of the city's budget and how it works, testifying on legislation like what you brought up about the gun control. So that was something that we've done recently,
Mhm.
getting recommendations from folks and letting them know that you have the ability to have impact on some of these bills that are happening or suggest bills that the city should pass. And that's been my platform. I'm still working on that
Mhm.
to this day. Now that I'm in this seat, I know that stuff takes a while to happen. And so, like, for example, I've made some recommendations to the District Department of Transportation, it's DDOT for short, and they're the ones that handle many of the infrastructure issues in terms of the road. And so, if I put a recommendation in on 1 January, it's 134, 134 days that they have to respond, right?
Mhm.
They got to do their traffic safety investigation. And then once they do that, then it takes time to find the funding in the budget and doing all of those things. So if I made a recommendation on January 1st, 2022, you might not actually see the result until July 2023, just because of the amount of time that it takes. And this isn't the only neighborhood in the entire city that needs to be fixed. And so one reason why you would want to keep somebody like myself in is I started the process and I need to be able to see the process through. And the process happens to cross terms of a commissioner. So if somebody else new came in, sure, I would want to have a transition process with that person, but there's just going to be some things that they don't have the institutional knowledge of or the working experience with to be able to see it through. So it would be in the best interest to, especially if you do have somebody working, such as myself, to then have that person reelected so that we can continue to do that work. So when I say continue to do the work, that's actually what I mean, is to continue this process on something. So like now we just started the Malcolm X Garden, right? Continuing the process on getting that funding, building the schedule of people to tend to the garden, getting the volunteers, all of that stuff. And not that I still wouldn't want to be part of that process, I would just have less authority if I wasn't the commissioner. So, like I said, it would be to the advantage of us as a community to continue to do that work and being able to have the authority over that. Because if somebody else came in, that might not be the level of creativity and thought and insight to what's going on in the community that they have. To sit and say, okay, well, you know what, we on Malcolm X Avenue, we're going to put the Malcolm X Community Garden. And to think of all of these folks that's been here, and this is no shade to nobody else, it wasn't started until May 19th this year. Yeah.
Now, also too, like I know the focus is the babies in your ward, and how are you able to address their needs, the children needs that are in your community, and by me saying address their needs, where you can curtail some of their illegal activity, push for education to make sure that they have a safe environment to grow in.
Right now, one of the things that I did this past school year was at the start of it was to work with this, what they call it, DGS, Department of Governmental Services, to get some of the buildings repaired because they were coming back into buildings in which the ventilation wasn't where it needed to be. And if not coming out of, if we're still living in the pandemic where it's a respiratory issue of folks breathing in some things that can cause them to be sick, we got to get this fixed. How does that help? How does that help somebody in these other areas? Well, if you're physically sick, then your stress levels are higher. All these other social ills are higher now because you're sick. So if we can get those addressed, that can help you in other spaces.
Well, pardon, okay, take it from right here.
Okay. All right. Please, Commissioner, the question I have is piggybacking off what we're dealing with the children. How can we change the mental state of the babies who live in fear within their own communities from having to walk to school and wonder if they're going to make it to school or if they're going to be able to come back home for school
I
safe?
got you. So I did a couple of things actually. I've done the man the block. I've worked with some brothers in the mosque, some folks in the church, some other brothers that just wanted to see their children move to and from safely. But that's not sustainable because we can't take off every morning and every afternoon to be there. So then we worked with the Department of Transportation to help get a bill passed called Safe Passages Act, where funding can be put in place to where we can have folks to get hired to now be there. So we're planting multiple trees with one seed. One, we created job opportunities for folks, and then two, their job is to make sure that as our babies go to and from, that they can be safe. And then that frees up principals and other staff members that were doing that to then be available in other spaces. Because just because the school day in terms of class instruction may have ended at 2:45 or 3 o'clock, right, doesn't mean that after school program isn't going on. So I've seen staff be pulled from that so that students get to and from safely. So now they can return back to those spaces to provide programming while we have people who are now paid to be outside to help navigate that space. So that's just one thing that we've done. And the other thing is for the next school year, we're working on getting a partnership with the National Society of Black Engineers to do after school programming at the Berry Farm Rec Center. That'll also be another opportunity for some folks. So we've gotten the funding together. Now it's just coordinating people's schedules, to be in that space. I can no longer physically, be in that space, but what I can do is help to get the funding to get people, into that space.
Right, because I remember back in the days when I was growing up back in now why I remember we had
Boys and Girls Clubs.
We had the Boys and Girls Club, the PL, but we also had the Guardian Angels who stepped up.
So indeed.
I was even once a junior Guardian Angel to help assist Curtis Sleeboy, absolutely. And, to help assist where law enforcement at that point in time could only go so far inside your own territory. So a community, a village got together and decided to say, listen, we need to police up our own. We need to start taking care of our own. And I think that's one of the main structures I hear that you were saying and talk about that should be going. That should be a worldwide thing. Really should be a worldwide thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm be honest, it's easier to do a lot of things when we were younger because we lived in a different day and time. And now with the advent of technology, with a lot of younger folks feeling more emboldened to challenge authority, a lot of stuff is harder. And unfortunately, some young folks only respect somebody that got heat with them. And so what you might have been able to do in, 88, you wasn't always able to do in 98. And you definitely ain't able to do 2018. And now here we are, 2022. I think it might have been a year and a half ago. We saw a 13 and a 15-year-old girl try to rob Uber driver for his car in D.C. here in the Navy Yard. He wound up getting killed. 13 and 15 years old. They had a taser. They was trying to tase him. So I don't know what could have necessarily prevented that per se, but I mean, we're just not able to do some of those different things. I'm right. I mean, you're right, and I'm with you that having that presence is there. We just need to figure out how to be more creative and how to get people the tools and resources that they need. Because as I'm sitting in the seat and what I'm learning is that there's a legal liability that some of us aren't willing to take or shouldn't have to take.
Well, Commissioner, speaking of like with an example of those two young ladies or what have you, how can we curtail some of this violence that our children are committing? Like they've been exposed to so many guns, every time you turn around there's a gun violence, strong arm robbery, a homicide, and these homicides are made or caused by individuals who are 16 and under. So how can we address that issue where they can get the guns taken away from them or slowed up in that process? Because we're losing our babies to the system behind gun violence and behind just innate thinking and being aggressive and being really violent toward the infrastructure, but toward their families, toward their community. How can we do something to change all that?
Like I said, it's a combination of things. It's just not one thing. It's providing them with different alternatives. Conflict resolution might be in some spaces. We just taking away the cell phones. They can't get on it after a certain hour. I was talking to a parent yesterday, and she was saying one of the things that she has in her house is that the Wi-Fi is on the timer. So after a certain hour, the children in her house can't get on Wi-Fi, so that stuff is cut down in that space. And we're gonna have to just do some of those things because the culture around us is a very violent culture.
Right. And that's the thing that I feel like we need to address. The anger issues that our children have today, the things that they are exposed to, and how we can become the problem solver instead of the problem ignorer. Because a lot of times we ignore certain situations.
Yeah, we do ignore them because, just truth be told, some of us are part of that problem, right? Some of us accept some of that behavior. Some of us condone some of that behavior. I know as a DJ, I had to ask myself, Can I still play Lil Kim? Can I still play Foxy Brown? Right? Because I started DJing when I got to the Grambling State University back in the 90s. And it was I still wanted to bump KRS-One and Queen Latifah, but that wasn't rocking no parties. Right?
Mhm.
So then it's how do you find the I don't even want to call it the balance in the two, but how do you find a space for certain things? And I had to realize some spaces are for adults and some spaces are for children. As
Mhm.
an adult, I can properly comprehend Mob Deep, right? And so I'm not going to go out there and do everything that Mob Deep talked about, but on young impressionable minds, some of the stuff that they're exposed to consistently feeds their minds. And so we gotta just keep them away from some of those things to the best of our ability, not shelter them, but some stuff just isn't acceptable. And I think it's okay for us to just acknowledge that, right? And it's also at the same time getting parents the help that they need. Because some parents can't always be there 24/7 with their children. And then sometimes when they do have them, like I've seen parents cussing their children out. Some parents need help with learning how to be a better parent. And I don't think there's no shame in that because I grew up in an intergenerational household. My grandparents were there to help my mother learn how to be a better mother. And she had other older sisters and brothers that could help her. And so now you got a lot of people who are on their own trying to navigate this very difficult space without a village. And if it takes a village, then we got to either create that village ourselves or go get connected to one.
Do you see us walking into a martial law effect sometime down the line?
So many of us are still in martial law because many of our communities are still in the state of emergency. They
Mhm.
started to lessen some of the restrictions, but we go back 2 years from today, it definitely was martial law in some of these places. They just called it a state of emergency or an emergency order,
Mhm.
and where there was a curfew. So it was there. It's just changing in some of these spaces.
Okay. Well, Commissioner Adolfo, we're talking about literacy
Mhm.
and education and re-educating parents on how to become parents, right? Um, how has this shaped and mold Ward 8? What have you seen in Ward 8 to show you the necessity of the parents need the community to be involved? And I'm not talking about DCH and all the rest. I'm talking about the actual community to be involved to wrap their arms around them.
So I want y'all to follow me on something here. So in the 80s, the 70s going to the 80s, we had the rise of the crack epidemic.
Right.
So we had parents, we had people that were strung out on crack and cocaine, heavy, right? They had children. And so when they had those children, what their children had to grow up with were parents who were abandoning them, abusing them, selling them for drugs, doing all kinds of things. So
Right.
those children grew up in that environment. And then they had children. And all of the abuse and traumatic situations that they lived through, they reared children in those situations. And oftentimes they didn't even get therapy. So now we're dealing with the grandchildren of the crack era who are like what Tupac said, young, black, and they just don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why you can see them do some of the things that they do now because they never had nobody that cared for them because they grew up with a parent that was abused and abandoned. And then
Mm-hmm.
they passed that down.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we need the community to come and wrap their arms around each other and give each other grace because that's I feel lucky, blessed, privileged, whatever positive attribute you want to give to be able to grow up in a house where I had my grandmother, my grandfather, several aunts and uncles, older cousins, and I came home to a meal that was prepared with love from my grandmother. Whether I like the way it tasted or not is a different situation. But something else that I had, which is often what's the right word here? It's not often looked at for what it actually is, and that's called discipline. Discipline is love.
Yeah.
Right?
Sir. Yes, sir.
I never saw my grandfather get upset because we didn't want to see that happen. So we dealt with our grandmother. She whooped us, but I could only imagine what it was like if my grandfather had to step in. Right. But the reason why I say discipline is love, because before we went to bed, we had to make sure all the dishes were washed, dried, and put away. The stove was clean. The kitchen floor was swept and mopped, and the trash was taken out. The bathroom was clean. And we had to do these things, or my grandmother was gonna go get the switch, and it was gonna be some problems. But that was love, because she was saying, before you go to bed, keep a clean home.
That's right.
And cleanliness is godliness. It's not next to it. It is an attribute of it, right? And that was the discipline of knowing, okay, when I wake up in the morning, I'm not waking up to filth. I'm waking up to a clean home, right? And so we don't see that in some spaces. Now discipline is looked at, oh, it's punishment. It's harsh. Discipline is love.
Definitely so.
Or the direction is love.
Definitely so.
Right? But we got to flip it, because the greatest trick, one of the greatest tricks the devil ever pulled was convince you that it didn't exist. And so what's godly is looked at as devilishment sometimes. The devilishment is we're happy and excited about calling our women bad bees.
Right.
How are we excited about being a savage? I didn't know being a savage was a positive thing. But
not according to the 17th degree and the 1 to 40, it is.
Oh, when did that become positive? So we gotta shift that.
Absolutely.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, like we getting close to the hour time, and
no doubt.
And we got to make another episode with the great commissioner, because there's a lot of information that's still left on the table.
When's your election time coming for you?
It's in November.
Okay.
I want to can we come back and do something on Black August for all our sisters and brothers that behind the wall that forgot about? I know this is Memorial Day weekend. You're supposed to remember all of the fallen soldiers, but we got some fallen soldiers in our community. I want to Sunday Coley, who was in the car with Asada Shakur, just got released. But there was a brother, his name was Zaid Shakur, that was in the car with Asada Shakur when she got pulled over on New Jersey Turnpike. And he was a soldier in our community. He didn't make it. We got brothers and sisters that was in the Black Liberation Army that went to war with the beast. We got brothers and sisters that was fighting for this nation, for this culture, that didn't make it, whose names we will never know. And we got to remember them. But I definitely would love to come back in August for us to talk about our Black political prisoners of war. One in particular, Dr. Mutulu Shakur, the father of Tupac Shakur, who's still behind bars. If we can talk about, just some of those sisters and brothers. Astada Shakur is still one. She's in exile. Then plus we got family members that, are doing bids. And so that's just the time for us to remember some of our folks that are still in prison. I'd love to come back and just add on, and we can talk about that.
Definitely. And I would love to have you back in August. So make sure we get together on your calendar, because you're a busy man when it started getting close to
Yes, sir.
But we want to say right now, we love you, Commissioner Salim.
I appreciate it.
And we love the work that you've been doing. And by all means, you're always welcome.
Thank you.
Keep shining, Commissioner.
Also, we need you about 2 minutes. Okay. 2 minutes after the show, if you could just hold on 1 second. Okay. But Kay, take us up out of here, big bro.
Absolutely. Peace and blessings, party people. You know what time it is. Thank you again for tuning in to the Real 360 show with our special guest and our brother in God, Commissioner Salim Adolfo. We appreciate you, Adolfo, and look forward to having you back once again with more knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and spreading the love. Support the commissioner. If you in the area, support the brother for doing what's right and exact. It takes a nation. You know what I mean? It's time to build. It's time to build. It's time to build. And on that note, we're going to be out.
Yo, ladies and gentlemen,
Peace to Allah's nation of gods and nurse. To all the human families of the planet Earth, we say peace.
Coming on. Also, too, we want to make sure that y'all listening and subscribing, and tell a friend and tell a friend, and keep sharing, because we want to keep bringing y'all the real content. You know, so DJ K-Ron, you brother, take us up out of here, son. Peace.
I want to give a big shout out to the gods and nurse. To all the human families of the planet Earth, I say peace. But you are subscribing to those who continue to watch and listen to the show each and every time we come on. I give a big shout out and love, peace, and happiness. The people, man, moving the child of the human, not first. It's time for us to disperse. We bring the best, not the worst. We thank you once again for tuning in to the real 360. Bring a friend to hit that like and subscribe, so we continue to grow to bring more knowledge and wisdom to you upon our show. You make it possible for us to do what we do. Now it's time to end it just the way